for listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. Before we get started, make sure you check us out on our social media at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks, we really appreciate it. This is episode 140, where we talk about what you can expect when walking into a firearms class, as well as some green and red flags to watch out for, plus the big differences between basic and more advanced classes. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy episode 140 of Range Minded, the things to expect from a firearms class. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined as always by
the one and only Steve Zimmerman.
Indeed, and
here for the first time in 2021 is Nick Hoffer.
Oh, wow, I see what you did there.
For the first time.
For the first time.
Yeah, and the first time this week.
First time all over.
I was just thinking, maybe I can make it onto every episode this year.
Maybe.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
That'd be a good goal to have.
We didn't talk about that last time.
It sounds a little bit reachy, though, so let's just make it one show at a time.
Take it one show at a time.
That's probably safer that way.
Mark, what are we going to talk about today?
So today we are talking about training. We talked a lot about all the new gun owners from last year, somewhere up in about 20 million, I would say. At least 5 million new gun owners, but 20 million new background checks within the last year. And we talked about encouraging everybody to get training and all that, but I thought it would be wise to talk about what kind of goes into that training, maybe what kind of training level you need to be at if you're whether you're a new or maybe a seasoned gun owner, and what you can expect when you walk into the training, and maybe some things to watch out for, some things that you maybe are red flags or green flags.
Yeah.
So
got to watch out for all those red flags. So,
well, I mean, there's no shortage of how do you say, in the most polite terms, maybe not the best or highest quality instructors.
So, yeah. There's a couple out there.
You want to know kind of what you're looking for,
Easy, Steve. I haven't even started instructing yet, and you're already calling me out.
Well, You'll get better. You'll get better.
God, I hope so.
Everybody's
You're kind of a yellow
somewhere.
flag.
What's that? Is that the caution flag that they use for NASCAR? Just be careful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the caution flag. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. So, but I think one of the big things that a lot of people, the biggest hurdles is they don't know what to expect when they go for firearms training, and so. It might be wise to kind of walk people through it. And I think that would encourage more people when they know kind of what to expect.
Yeah, because I think it is kind of scary for first time gun owners. Like in my experience, like when I sell a gun to somebody that's never owned a firearm before, they're usually apprehensive and they know they need training, but they're kind of scared to ask. It
Sure.
seems like some of them are. And maybe it's because they're worried about somebody treating them like they're stupid or, maybe talking them down. And maybe they've had that experience at other gun stores.
Sure.
And so I think there's a percentage of new firearms owners that are just too scared to ask questions of what the next step is.
Yeah, they're already in an uncomfortable position being in a gun store, being a first-time gun owner, and being around people who maybe you would think know everything and anything about guns there is, makes you look like kind of an idiot.
Well, and I think on the other side of that, even if you're not a first-time gun owner, it's scary to, I guess, ask for help and instruction, especially if you're someone who either thinks yourself or other people think already have that experience, and maybe you don't.
Sure.
I know when I first started in the firearms industry, I kind of felt that way. I was nervous to go to some of the shoots and stuff that we did because I wasn't as skilled as maybe most of the people that I was going with.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point. Because, maybe enough to, this is maybe a bad turn of phrase, but enough to be dangerous, but, you don't have maybe the confidence to go along with some of that theory competence,
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I think that's a really great term for what you're talking about, because all of us do know just enough to be dangerous for sure, be it to someone else or ourselves.
Yeah. So why don't we start by just talking about what you can expect walking into a firearms class, and we'll just go with a reputable place like Independence Indoor Shooting, for example. Let's say we're going to walk into our basic pistol class after buying our pistol, and we're ready to walk in there and get better at what we do. What do you expect when you walk into that lesson or that class?
Well, the very first thing you're going to encounter are the instructors are going to be welcoming, and they're not going to be overwhelming. They're not going to be condescending. They're going to accept you at whatever level you are, right in the door.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be welcoming. They should be, as soon as you walk in, like you said, Steve, they should be welcoming you and saying, "Hey, how's it going? Great to have you here. What's your name?" They're probably going to check you in because if they're organized, there is a roster usually of who's supposed to be there and who's not.
I hope so.
Usually not a free-for-all.
No, thank goodness. And not because we want to make money, even though we want to make money, but it's important to know who's coming in and who's, because I've had it too where I had an RSO class the same day as a basic pistol class, and they sat in the class for several minutes before they realized this is the wrong class. Then they get embarrassed.
That sounds like the freshman year in high school almost, where it's like you don't know where you're going, you don't know what class you're supposed to be in or where you're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
You'll have an instructor welcome you and make you feel like you're part of it, and that you're supposed to be there and that you're in the right class. And you'll probably be, I would say, and this always surprises me, I'm always surprised by the kinds of people that are there. Because, especially that first class, you might think it's maybe all types of gun nuts or something, but it really isn't. It's all kinds of people that you'd be surprised by.
Yeah. And the basic pistol is probably one of my most favorite classes to teach, because most of them are brand new firearms owners, or even a husband. I think we talked about this a while ago, where I had a husband and wife team show up, and he was a little bit more experienced, but it's hard to teach a spouse how to shoot. So she decided she wanted to take a class, and he just kind of tagged along.
Yeah.
And it was fun. Like, he even learned some stuff by the end of the class.
Sure. I was going to say, that's not a bad way to kind of take a refresher, or make somebody that's new to guns feel a little bit more comfortable, and you have the means to do it, is to kind of take a refresher class for sure.
So, question for you, Steve, because you teach at Independence. So, first shots or beginner basic pistol class first? How do you decide which one of those? Because there is quite a jump. I mean, one's $35 and one's $100. So
yeah, and the first shots class, the nice thing about that, the way that's set up, is it's for people that have never or have very, very little exposure to firearms. And I know some of the other guys that are, or gals, some of the other instructors, I should say, that have been teaching that class, have had very good responses coming out of the class from those students. So if you've never, ever touched a gun, maybe that whatever hour and a half or whatever it is of first shots with a .22 caliber, maybe that's the right thing to do first. Because there's a lot of folks, I've done things where I thought I'd be really excited to do, and then I get involved, and then I spend a lot of money, and then I realize I don't like it.
Right.
Yeah, it's possible.
Well, that kind of talks about, like, where I had talked before about the concealed carry class, and my reason for wanting to get into instructing is to teach that pre-concealed carry class. So that would be similar to kind of what you're talking about then with the Independence First Shots program, kind of what to expect when you become a gun owner and start shooting.
And again, those brand new people to firearms, I really enjoy spending time with those people, because first of all, they have no bad habits,
right?
And it's just a complete blank slate, and then we can grow from there. And I've helped a lot of new shooters, almost exclusively women. They seem to be a little bit more wouldn't say passionate, but there's a lot more emotion involved in the first couple of shots coming out of a handgun. That it's a big hump for them to get over, and it's so rewarding to see them go from shaking and barely wanting to touch the gun, and then to the end of the class, seeing them shoot bullseyes, and their confidence level just skyrockets.
Yeah, it's a cool thing to watch people gain not only competency but comfort and confidence with a firearm. And I agree with Steve there, Nick, that if you have never touched a gun before, you don't own a gun, you can take a basic pistol class if you want to, but I would echo what Steve says, that I would highly recommend that the first shots class, which if you go to a reputable gun store, they should have kind of an intro to guns class where you should be able to experience that.
And first shots really comes through the NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, because they saw a need, talking to lots of other ranges and store owners of some program to first of all get people interested in firearms and then get them behind small caliber pistols. And the nice thing with the NSSF is they actually help advertise for those classes.
Nice.
Awesome. So at the range there's first shots, there's a basic pistol, and then I also saw that there is the My First Gun for women. Is that going to be different than the first shots class itself?
I imagine it will be. I haven't had a chance to really look at that curriculum, but I'm assuming that it's going to be taken care of by Sarah, who has come a long ways in her journey to becoming an instructor. She has a way to connect with timid ladies when it comes to shooting, and so I'm sure she'll be the one ramrodding that. And but first shots is for anybody. Doesn't matter who you are, where the ladies class there is obviously designed for ladies, which in my experience too has been, because we're jerks. I always say that in classes, guys are jerks, and it's kind of hard sometimes for women to be willing to ask questions or open up and learn when there's guys in the class that could very well be judgmental or sometimes just dirtbags,
Sure. Yeah, and I, we've had Sarah on before a couple times, and more than a couple times now, I guess. And she's done really, really well, and both on the podcast and as an instructor. And that's what she's talked about too, is that women are usually more hesitant around other men, but I've seen it in when I RSO'd for the independent women shoots. There's an energy there. There's a willingness and an eagerness to learn and excitement to learn, and that you don't see in other classes, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the difference between that first shots and the introduction and basic pistol classes. Like you said, if we've never shot a gun before, period, or maybe somebody who hasn't, that would be the class to either direct them to or take yourself. And then, from there you step it up to the basic pistol.
Mm-hmm.
Which, we kind of started talking about a little bit. But see, why don't you keep walking us through after maybe you notice, you've got, a dozen other people there or so, and you've got the instructor and you're sitting down, taking your seat. What can you expect once the class starts?
Well, for me and my experience with some of the other instructors, I have a hard time waiting too long to get the class started.
Sure.
So many times, even a couple of minutes after the time, like I'm trying to get that class going. And I understand people get late sometimes, but if that happens to you, don't feel embarrassed. They'll get you caught up. But I try to keep the classes on time. It's just something about me. I hate being late for any kind of a meeting. Even though I am occasionally, it still drives me nuts to not start a class on time. So you'll get in there, you'll sit down, the class should be going. They will, well, at least for me, I always try to get the students to introduce themselves and why they're there. For me, I like knowing what I need to cover, or maybe spend a little bit more time on.
Sure.
I want to know what the student expects from the class, so I give them what they expect, or what they paid for. To me, that's a big deal. your time and your money as a student is more valuable to you than it is to me, and I want to make sure that you're getting some kind of a value out of that. And then we'll go through the basic handgun. Really, thankfully, there's not a lot of slides in that PowerPoint. It's we talk about and make fun of NRA a lot of times. Usually their PowerPoint presentations are like 100 slides long, and it's so boring. We try to mix in some videos, and we want to keep it entertaining and engaging, and that comes with the ability to teach adults. Adults are way harder to teach than kids because we get bored, and sometimes we feel like we already know the information, so we zone out. Or if the instructor's just dry as salt, then it's hard to keep attention. So we try to mix it up as much as possible.
Yeah, we're more apt, I think, as adults to skip things or to, just assume we already know the basics or whatever and can kind of gloss over something. So, but no, that's good. And I would say that's a mark of a good instructor too, is that informing you about what you're going to learn, what the concepts are going to be, what you're going to get for your money. And I think one thing that maybe a lot of people would be surprised that have never been to a class before is that there's usually more classroom time than there are shooting time, at least in those first kind of introductory or basic classes. To make sure that
for me in the basic, it's a 4-hour class, and we end up being maybe an hour and a half inside the range, maybe a little bit more, depends on the needs of the shooters.
Yeah, it's about, I would say on average it's about half and half, but and I think sometimes the other part of it is just being in a range and being comfortable in a range, spending time, whether you're shooting or not. I think most people who probably are new gun owners maybe have been to a shooting range once or not at all. And they don't really know what to expect either. And I think there's a comfort that comes, comfort level that you gain after spending enough time in a range. So I think the mark of a good basic class, again, with not only with the instructor, but you're spending, equal times in the classroom with, as well as in the range as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, hopefully. And, made me think of something. And Nick, and I think you talked about this too, is, you've taken shooters to the range. And I think you said some of them are even fairly new to shooting. Did they have a different experience inside the range than what they expected?
As in, like, what they expected when going to the range with me, or as in a class setting?
No. Even just going into the range, to an indoor range, was it more or less than what they had expected as far as anything?
I think a lot of them go into it kind of thinking that it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. I think that's why. To be honest with you, I think that's why a lot of people opt to go out of a range setting to go shooting, because of the nervousness of the people around them. Yeah. I know that, like, I swear every time I take a new person shooting, especially if I'm going to do any type of instruction with them, I get next to the person with the Smith & Wesson 500, and for some reason they think that they needed to buy a whole box of ammo.
And they need to run through it as fast as possible and then go buy more.
No, yeah, exactly. That or I'm right next to the guy on the 25-yard range shooting his 30-06 that he just chopped the barrel down to nothing on.
Awesome.
Yeah. But so once we get past the fear of the shots going off and the fear of not knowing what they're doing when they're handling the gun, and potentially having the RSO come tap you on the shoulder and tell you, hey, you can't do that a couple of times, then it becomes more of a fun experience. And yeah, when we leave, they definitely want to come back and do it again.
Yeah. And I've noticed with a lot of shooters, new shooters, whether in the class or just at the range, that they worry more about what the range is going to be like. And then when they get there, they have this expectation of craziness, and then they realize, oh, it's just loud and I can do this. And they start to slow down and focus. And I think if you are thinking about taking a class and you haven't been into an indoor range, it is noisy. It can be kind of chaotic at times, but it's safe, and it's probably not as bad as what you expect.
Sure.
So yeah. I will say this. So something that I did, because I do take a lot of people to the indoor range now, to Independence, is I actually bought a second pair of Walker digital earmuffs.
Oh yeah,
and that makes a huge difference for people when they don't have to like yell or have to like remove their earmuff to hear what you're trying to say to them, and you can kind of talk at a normal level. And people are so used to now having headphones or whatnot that they're more comfortable being able to hear you. They don't have to put earplugs in. It's helped a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I think they were.
I was gonna say that's
$35. So
yeah, and then even just having extra everything really, like an extra speed loader, or a what do you call it, an uplula?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Just having those as an instructor, I think would be good to have, because you're as a new shooter, you're not even going to know that those things exist. You know what I mean? I remember when I first started shooting, I took people, or I would go with people, and I just had my dad's earphones that were from like the 1970s. It looked like squares on the sides of my head. You know what I mean? And I had no idea that electronic earmuffs were even a thing. And then you learn that there's Bluetooth in them and all that kind of stuff. And I think showing people how much more comfortable you can be and how much you can like hear and communicate, with technology now is also a good thing. So.
Yeah, and so for me, like Steve said, I enjoy taking people shooting. Like I'll meet people, they find out what I do, and they always like reach out to me later and talk to me about shooting. So I'll try and take them to the range. Well, I've created an entire separate range bag just for when I'm going to take somebody new to the range to shoot, because just like you said, I have up-to-date earmuffs. I've got speed loaders. I've got a couple of different guns that we take, one being a 22 conversion, that way we can kind of see what they're comfortable shooting and get them started with the smaller caliber. But I also bring all my own ammo so that they don't have to worry about any of that. And it makes it a lot more enjoyable. And then I can do more like education on how much fun it can be and how safe it is, over them having to worry about, did I bring safety glasses? Did I get targets? Did I get earplugs? And then having to use stuff that might not be the most comfortable, be it in-ear earplugs and cheap $2 safety glasses.
Right.
That's smart. Yeah.
I think you brought up some important points as students wanting to take a class, or when they go to the class, is that instructor, or whether it's one-on-one or you're at a formal class setting, he needs to be prepared for whatever could happen. And so I like that you have it set up in a way that no matter who you take, they're ready to go. They don't have to worry about spending any more money. They don't have to, a fear of, I'm going to go blind or I'm going to go deaf. No, you've got it taken care of. And anyone that really cares about sharing the joy of the Second Amendment, whether it be on one-on-one or in a classroom setting, it's got to be willing and able to roll with the punches and kind of create a class setting that's going to be comfortable for all their students.
Yeah, and because from a student's perspective, I would say is that if you maybe forget something, like you're already, like we talked about at the beginning, you're kind of already on edge. You think you're going to be around people who are maybe, more experienced than you, may make fun of you, or, you're just in that uncomfortable position. Well, if you forget something and nobody has what you nobody has an extra pair of, ear protection or eye protection or whatever, that's going to probably, mess with and leave a bad taste in your mouth from that first, gun experience. And that might turn you off to guns altogether. So, definitely,
And to be straight up honest, I've never taught a class where every student had everything they needed.
Sure. Because you don't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just don't know.
Here's something to think about too. So all of us have been in a situation where maybe we were the outsider or we weren't 100% comfortable. And
right.
You think about, like, if you had to ask for something, you may have been hesitant.
Yeah.
If you had to ask for something, then you may have felt uncomfortable after that because you didn't have what you needed. And I think the best experiences are always the ones where if you're new to something and someone like for me, offering to take someone shooting, they always say, well, what do I need to bring? And I say, you don't need to bring anything unless you have something specific that you want to bring.
Right.
Otherwise,
just bring yourself.
Everything is provided. Like I have everything that you need. And then if we're going to go a second, third time, okay, then I'm going to say, okay, make sure next time that you pick up some safety glasses and earplugs. These are the ones that you used. Here's where you can get them. Or after we're done shooting, we'll walk through the store and they'll ask questions and we'll look at guns and whatnot. And then they have a better idea of what they need to continue on doing that. But the first experience, I always want that for the person to be their best interaction with not only me, but the sport of shooting.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's exactly the way to do it. It's just, and that's the way I've done it with the couple of people that I've taken shooting. Don't worry about bringing anything. Just bring yourself and we'll take care of the rest. And one thing I do always make mention of afterwards is like, hey, ammo's not free. But, for right now, I will show you what it's like and you don't have to worry about it, because I think, like you said, Nick, not having to worry about being the outsider and forgetting something and being unprepared and all that is just going to make it worse. So if you can provide something for everybody, you're going to be, you're going to give those folks a much better time.
Yeah, and I think as an instructor teaching a class, like up front in the class, you should let people know, hey, if you don't have something or you're uncomfortable with something that you already have, like let me know. And I'll do what I can to get you the right thing or to modify or fix the thing that you have to make it work better for you. Because even then, I've seen people who have, maybe you have a certain gun. I actually RSO'd a concealed carry class one time for some friends and family. And the one guy was shooting an LCP 380. He's 6'4", 250 pounds. And halfway through the shooting portion, I was like, dude, try the rest of this using my gun. There's a Glock 19. I'm like, he's like, no, I want to shoot the gun that I'm going to carry. I'm like, listen, in order to make sure that you're very good on the fundamentals, try it with a gun that fits your hand better, get through the drills, and then after we're done, I'll let you finish out your rounds in 380 so that you can do that. But I see you struggling. I see you struggling with the reloads. Let's get the basics in, and then we can go back and do it the way that you want, so you feel comfortable with that gun. But there's times as an instructor, or even an RSO, like you see someone struggling, and it's because some of the equipment that they have doesn't fit them right. And whoever helped him pick out that gun, or if it was an ego thing, he just bought the gun without talking to anybody or even trying it, and now he's struggling with it. Now he has some more information. He's got to put his hands onto a different gun and see like what it could be like.
Yeah. And that's another thing. If you're at a gun shop that, or a range that rents guns too, you should usually be able to pick a different gun if you find one that's not working for you. Like again, going back to the independent woman or a basic pistol class where somebody may have a gun that, somebody else bought for them, or, their husband said it was the right gun for them, or any kind of case, you can usually spot that and say, hey, let's go get a gun from the rental counter. It won't cost you anything else, as long as it's the same caliber. And let's just try it out and see how this one feels. I think a class, a lot of people think is like you have to use the gear that you have, but it really is a great opportunity to try other gear as well if it's a well-equipped class.
Yeah. Yeah, and usually that's... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I have completely stopped telling people what gun they should buy. Anytime someone asks me, I have completely stopped saying, oh, you should go get the Glock 43 or you should go get the M&P Shield. I have a couple set questions that I ask, try and figure out what size gun they're looking for. I try and direct them into either a 380 or a 9mm as far as caliber goes. And then after that, I say, hey, maybe you should run down to the range, try one magazine from these 3 guns that we've narrowed it down to and see which one you like. And if it's a price thing, then I have guns that are in that price range that I recommend. But I used to be like, oh, you just get a Glock 19, you'll be fine. now I'm like, you know what? Like, here's my recommendations. Go get your hands on them. If you want, I'll meet you down there so that you can try them, or come by the shop and I have those guns. You can try them out in your hand and we can go shoot them. But I stopped being like, you should get this gun.
Well, the nice thing is there's so many good guns out there now, for every purpose, really, that there's a lot of options and choices, which is great.
Yeah, it's
great.
great.
I think what stopped me from doing that was that I was recommending a certain gun, and that person would already have that bias, like Ford versus Chevy type thing. Oh, I hate Glocks. Well, why? Well, because my brother. Well, I'm like, oh, okay. Well, then.
Or because the internet said so.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because I saw a gun blow up with hand loads on the internet.
Yikes.
So I just stopped doing that altogether and avoid that brand bias.
Yeah, that's a smart thing. So let's get into a little more detail into the class. What can you expect in maybe the classroom aspect? We don't have to go too far into the weeds on this, but I think there's at least an environment or a vibe that you should kind of expect in a classroom setting that's going to set you up for success. Steve, what do you think? Or Nick, either of you can chime in.
Well, hopefully you show up to the class as an empty vessel. It's really frustrating when a student shows up and they feel that they have all the answers and they just kind of shut off. And it's hard for the rest of the class too. So I think the very first thing is you should be going, even like we talked about that husband and wife team, you should go to the class expecting to learn something new and be willing to try maybe a different technique or whatever, because any information is going to make you better, hopefully, right?
Sure.
And other thing I think is really important that you show up with a notepad, because I forget things all the time. And, it's nice to just jot down those things that, oh, hey, that's a good idea, and just write them down. Because I guarantee if it's some little quirk or something, you're going to forget about it in a month. Yeah,
unless you write it down, which usually that works for me.
Yeah, I got a sieve for a memory, so.
So that's kind of what you should expect or what you can walk into. Usually, there's a PowerPoint presentation, some slides, that folks go through. What you shouldn't expect, is, kind of, how do I put this? A lot of opinions and attitude. If you end up finding that, maybe take what the folks are saying with a grain of salt. So there really should be kind of an objective view about, the basics of proper firearm handling, talking about safety, and that kind of stuff. If it starts to get opinionated, I would say, then maybe just keep your kind of ears perked up about that, because that's happened to me where, the first concealed carry class I ever took in Illinois, of all places, was, it was taught by a good guy. He was a retired law enforcement officer or whatever, but, he had a lot of opinions on a lot of things that some weren't even relevant to the course. And it was like, it kind of took you out of it. Obviously everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And what's funny is I agreed with him on most everything or whatever, but that's not what I kind of came here to listen to, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's important too, and maybe you remember this when I taught the RSO class, when you first took that class, was we want to give you the knowledge, skills, and attitude to become, a knowledgeable shooter. But what was the most important out of those three things? Do you remember?
The knowledge and the attitude.
No, attitude. Attitude is the most important, right?
Yes.
So we can learn things later. And that comes from instructors' point of view too. Like our attitude towards our students and towards the information that we're giving, as well as the attitude as a student that we're there to learn, that can make or break what we get out of the class. If you show up and the instructor is a tactical Timmy that just wants to, show how cool he is and how well he shoots, and you should listen to him because he's done all sorts of cool stuff in the past, that you're probably not going to get a lot out of that class.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but it's a reality of the gun world,
Yeah, and in my experience in the gun world and talking to people that really have solid experience, the ones that I'm going to learn the most from are the ones that don't brag about what they did.
Right, 100%.
It'll come up in a course somewhere or some little story here or there. but they're never going to lead anything in their class about, well, I did this and this is why you have to do it.
Right. It's usually, this is an experience that happened to me, and here's why it's relevant to what I want to teach you.
Yeah. One of the things I think about right off the bat is Bill, when he talks about some of the stuff when he was a detective in Los Angeles, completely relevant to the subject that he was talking about.
100%.
And you learn, like, oh, man, he put that in an analogy that I completely understand. And I believe him because he had that experience.
Yeah, it personalizes the point that what your instructor is trying to make. So the other thing I think you can expect is, kind of an open dialogue where you're able to ask questions at every time and ask for clarification. It goes back to that, the attitude of being an open vessel and being open to having questions. And really, I would say that there are no stupid questions. I think there are bad attitudes. But I think that there aren't, stupid questions that you can ask, especially, before you go onto the range, I would say.
And I want questions.
As a student, if you have a question and you don't ask that question, so we know this from all kinds of classes and training, not just firearms. If you have a question, someone else may have that. And if you don't ask it, someone else and you will not get the information because you didn't ask the question.
Right.
So no matter how uncomfortable or awkward you feel by asking, hey, I don't know where the safety is on this gun, or should I carry in this position or not, just ask the question, because the instructor, if it's a good instructor, I don't know about Steve, they shouldn't make you feel uncomfortable with their answer.
For the record, Steve is
stupid.
For the record, Steve is a great instructor. I remember everything from the class.
Everything?
Yes.
I try. I'm not going to claim I'm perfect and I know everything, because I absolutely do not. But I try, just like we talked about today, I try to give everything that the students want when they get there and invest their time and money in the class.
Yeah, and that's.
Well, I'm taking his next class that he comes down here to teach, so that I can know for sure. Because all I can only recommend Steve on his charm. I haven't seen him teach.
Oh,
well, it's definitely not my looks. So,
well, without the Billy Goat beard, yeah, you're only really going off of charm and skill now.
Oh boy.
Well, let's talk about the range portion a little bit. What can you expect? On the range portion of a class, obviously, having your eyes and ears protected before you even step foot onto the range. My big thing that I wrote down while I was preparing is safety.
Yeah, that is paramount at the store, and it should be paramount with any instructor that you take a class from. It doesn't matter at what level, even if they're using blue guns. Safety and gun handling, any of that stuff should be top priority, because especially with new shooters, we're teaching habits. And so if you have an instructor that's pointing his blue gun at everybody, who's to say that he's not going to be pointing a real firearm at students inside the range?
Right.
So safety is top tier no matter what. And I'm going to say this too, if you feel uncomfortable or you feel unsafe at any class, leave.
Yeah.
Leave.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive or rude or whatever, but if you really feel that unsafe, there's no reason to not walk out there. You know what I mean? Your safety is top priority.
Yeah. Okay. That being said, yeah. So when you go into the range, we're going to cover, at least for us, we're going to go through the range safety and etiquette all over again. When I teach the basic handgun, that's like the third slide in. We go through all that stuff. And you're going to hear it over and over again in the classroom, and then you're going to see it and hear it again before we go into the range. And we talk about some of the things like how and where we handle firearms in the range, which is easier to do inside the range than it is in the classroom. So some of that stuff will feel kind of redundant, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be loud. It's going to be obnoxious. There's going to be a lot of screaming. I know for me, I end up probably losing my voice 80% of the classes because I'm trying to talk loud enough for everybody to hear. Because
everybody doesn't have electronic hearing protection.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. but it's doesn't mean we're yelling at you and belittling you. It just means that we're trying to carry over the importance, and so everybody can hear.
Yeah, I think it's kind of habit at this point just to talk loudly in a range no matter what, like twice as loud as what you're used to.
And I'm a dad, so I tend to scream loud anyways.
Yeah, there's also that. So, I think that's a great, a great synopsis of kind of what to expect in a range. And then, obviously, the other thing I would say to expect is, just a slow process, especially in a beginner class.
Yeah, and there are some students that are dialed in rather quickly, and they're hitting bullseyes well, and they just take to it pretty naturally. The frustrating thing is there's the one or several students that may be having a harder time picking up on what's being taught, and so we as the instructors, we have to kind of spend a little bit of time with them, which ends up slowing down the class a little bit. So that's something you probably should be mindful of. If that you might be one of those two students. You might have picked it up and you're on point, or you might be the one lagging behind. Either way, you need to be a little patient with yourself. If you're the student that you notice needs a little bit more help, that doesn't mean that we're going to get annoyed by you and we're tired of you and we wish you would have brought another magazine or whatever. No, we're going to try and make sure that you get the same information as everybody else. Yeah.
Nick, anything to add?
No, I agree with that. I think that, 100%. I think that's exactly what we should do. I don't have anything to add.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, Nick, why don't you bring us home then? What can you kind of expect at the, you've gone through the classroom setting. You've gone through the range setting. You've shot your couple hundred rounds. You're feeling good. You're feeling confident. What can you expect, towards the end of that range session?
So for me, what I would be expecting is I would probably expect that you're gonna finish up. The instructor's gonna tell you kind of how you did, the things that you did well, the things that you could probably improve on, or possibly anything that you did that was unsafe, which they probably would have told you already at the time that it happened. And if you're still there, it obviously wasn't so unsafe that they kicked you out. I've seen that happen too.
Sure.
But at that point, then that's where your kind of notepad and stuff should come into effect and kind of write down like, what was the highlight of the class? What was something I want to improve on? And then what should I be looking for next? Do I need to look at that next class? Do I need to buy some more ammo and take these skills that I learned today and go out to the range and hit those drills over and over again? Or is there something that I learned that I know I need some more instruction on, and can I get some private instruction moving forward to drill in hard on just those specific things?
Yeah, there's got to be some self-reflection time there. That's a great point about, and usually your instructor can kind of, like you said, Nick, give you kind of some feedback like, hey, you did really well. I think you'd be, you're good to move on to the next level class, or, hey, maybe, next time you're at the range, take some time to, really dial these in, maybe practice a little bit more. You can usually ask your instructor as well.
Yeah,
like, hey, how did I do?
Yeah, if you're not afraid to ask questions and kind of ask like, hey, what can I do to improve better on my sight acquisition? What could I do to improve on my draw time and my draw stroke? And that instructor will probably give you some notes that say, hey, well, you can improve your draw times and the draw stroke by just making sure that your gun is clear and safe and doing some dry fire practice at home. And that's something that you can do at home, and you can do that every single day. And when you go to the next class, you can ask if it's the same instructor, hey, do you see improvement? Is this getting better? And then they can tell you from there, hey, let's get another class going, or let's focus on this here. And then same with the shooting. Like if you're trying to do sight acquisition, that's stuff you can do at home. The instructor will give you tips on how to do it.
Right.
But
well, and that's
definitely ask questions and take notes.
I would say that's the perfect transition into the next class, because at least at Independence, going from the basic to the intermediate pistol class, the big difference is holster work. Now, if you're in the basic pistol class, you're going from a pistol on the table, and picking it up off the table every time, setting it down, putting it in a bag, depending on if you have different, groups of people going, coming up to the line or not. And then when you get into the intermediate class, then you start, your holster work and when Nick was talking about the draw stroke and perfecting that draw and everything in the presentation, it builds off of those basic skills you get from that basic class and moves into the holster work. So at least that's how the intermediate works. Obviously, it might be different in the place that you were getting your lessons from. However, that's at least how we think it's best done at the shop. So
yeah.
So here's something I noticed at Independence. So I'm looking at all the classes, right? And I haven't actually taken any of these classes, so I don't know for sure. I mean, I've taken these classes, but not at Independence.
Sure.
So, and that's something I'm probably going to change now that I've looked at all these and read all the descriptions. But there's a holsters for women class, and we talked about how there's a whole section of classes designated specifically towards women, but there's not a general holsters class in general. And I think that if there's enough misinformation and questions on the female side of holsters, be it their ego might not be there, there's probably a lot of those same questions from men.
Oh,
because
sure.
I stand in the holster aisle when I'm at the shop, and I answer hundreds of questions and debunk tons of false information that they're going off of while trying to find that exact holster they saw on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I think going from, having a gun on a table to a holster is a big jump. And I think people don't give it enough time to really consider and sink into. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and I know they go through that in the intermediate or defensive pistol. They go through holster work. And I'm not sure if that one is specifically for like women's types of holsters or if it's holster work with a women's holster class.
So at the say the enhanced concealed carry or the intermediate pistol, is there like a holster requirement? I know some of the instructors I work with, they require outside the waistband holsters for most pistol on the range classes.
I know in the basic one you don't, but if you jump on the website at iishooting.com, they'll tell you kind of what to bring. With the enhanced concealed carry class, I don't believe you need the holster. In
the enhanced we don't cover any of the holster work because we want to really shrink that class size down where there's a lot more moving parts that could really go bad. And so we don't want to have like 30 students in the class to working on holster work. We want to really be able to focus on those students.
Yeah, because I seen here it doesn't even say. Well, obviously you guys must do it from behind the table. So
right,
yeah, we do it behind the table, but that's when we go into the defensive and intermediate. The class sizes are much smaller, and we go in front of the booths to where we can see all sides of the student and really diagnose and help them out.
Well, and I will say one of the big differences between, an enhanced concealed carry class at Independence and at other places, and not to say that other places are bad, but, with any kind of enhanced concealed carry class, it doesn't specify, it specifies that you need to shoot, I believe it's 99 rounds. You need in your class, but it doesn't necessarily go into the specifics of how those 99 rounds need to be, spent.
Right.
So you could theoretically just go out into the desert and shoot 99 rounds at nothing, and then you're good to go. We take you through, we use, I think 150 rounds, to take you through different drills.
Or sometimes more.
Yeah, 150 rounds minimum, I would say. But we take you through kind of all of the, different exercises and skills to learn and exercises you can do to get better. And even, I think, some real world, ish situations about, shooting from closer range or farther range or, things of that sort. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, the jump from I would say the biggest jump is from beginner to intermediate. I don't think that intermediate to advanced. I mean, it's the speed I think is what is the biggest difference between the two there. But beginner to intermediate will really give you a large advancement in your skills. I would say that's what the biggest difference to me, at least.
Yeah.
Nick, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. I was looking at these classes. So the next time we do this, I'm going to have taken all these pistol classes because I've just been reading the requirements and looking at what to bring, and now I'm intrigued on taking all of the classes that they offer on pistol.
You definitely should. And the other thing too is that, two things really. One is that, you can't usually, you can't expect to just jump into an advanced class or even maybe an intermediate class, depending on the situation. If you haven't taken the beginner class or you haven't kind of tested out of it, for lack of a better term. If you want to take an intermediate class and you don't have any kind of certification of taking any other class, you might have to kind of, I guess, prove that you do have the skills and the safety and the competence and confidence necessary to take those intermediate classes. But the other thing I was going to say is that, if maybe you have taken all of the advanced pistol classes, and you're fully confident in pistol shooting or whatever, maybe you want to expand your repertoire into an AR platform or a rifle kind of shooting or shotgun shooting. You can find those basic classes as well because, while the principles are the same, I would say and even the manual of arms are somewhat the same. There can be a big difference in the application of those firearms that you'll want some specific instruction over.
Yeah. And John Rhodes, he's fun to learn stuff from. He understands the AR platform pretty well, I would say, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. And he's one of those instructors you don't know what to expect from just talking to him, one on one to actually getting out on the classroom. But he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's very professional, is how I would put it. He doesn't mess around. Some people have more of a sense of humor and stuff, and he's a funny guy. But when it comes to training and stuff, he's very serious and professional, which I think is a good thing, because it really does. I remember being a little bit humbled by the fact that like, oh yeah, I can shoot pistols just fine. I'll be able to shoot an AR, no problem. Blah 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 blah, and then kind of realizing that I had a lot to learn once we got out onto the range.
Yeah.
So, there are definitely options for basic AR-15 or rifle, classes. There might even be, other kinds of classes that you'll find as well that will expand your knowledge beyond just pistols. I think pistols are obviously the most common and what most people are going to check out. But if you wanted to get into that into the other classes, you definitely can.
Yeah, and continuing education has been something that's been on my mind a lot the last couple of weeks, I would say.
Yeah.
About the what after the enhanced class, because almost everybody, they just take the enhanced class and that's it. They stop. Sure. And they figure they have enough information. Well, in reality, you have just started chiseling away at the education. There's so much more to learn. And even if you take the enhanced class 2 or 3 times, you're going to learn something every time.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important that you understand that once you become that student, don't stop. Like, I know it's expensive and ammo's hard to find. And, there's going to be a lot more classes to where you don't even need ammunition. You just need to show up and learn. So I think it's important that you don't just figure that you know everything after that enhanced class.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with Terry before too about I wish that more instructors had like a refresher class, like 12 months after you take your enhanced, like you get into the refresher class and hey, here's what's changed since the last time you took this class type of thing. I know that Hidden Heat, they put out a book every year that has like the updated laws for every state for every year, and I think USCCA has one too.
Yeah, they've They've updated their booklet.
Yeah, so and then it kind of updates the laws. It updates where you can carry a gun, like how you can carry, and kind of keep yourself knowledgeable of, hey, if I'm going to travel with this or have the rules in my state changed. And then kind of talking with the instructor and figuring out, hey, do I need to get into some more handgun training? Like, and the instructor asking questions like, hey, what have you done over the last 12 months to keep up your skills? Oh, well, maybe you should add this to what you're doing. And just a refresher after the enhanced class.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Because like you said, most people take the class and then that's it. And then, they think they're good to go. And really, like Steve said, it's really just the beginning of your firearms journey. We've said it a bunch of times on the show is that, if you think you're done learning about firearms, then, you need education, I think, more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Especially because there are so many classes, I think, where you can, if you really are dedicated to it, you can get into some multi-day classes, some outdoor stuff, working with carbines, and some stuff from some real deal people, that you can really learn a lot from. We've talked about, John Lovell, a Warrior Poet, Society, talked about his YouTube series, but he offers, multi-day classes with rifles and things of that sort. And there's a lot of great stuff to learn from there. And it's one thing being in, a range, a kind of a sterile environment where everything's pretty controlled, and then it's a different thing to go from that to a, outdoor setting, especially if you've never shot outdoors before and you're doing some more dynamic stuff. But usually in advanced class, you kind of go from moving slowly to moving a little bit more quickly, like I said earlier. But also, I think you're also moving. You're dynamic rather than standing still and drawing from a holster. So those are
and then some of those other advanced classes, like in an enhanced class, like I don't think they talk about getting off the X very much or becoming a more harder, a more difficult target, I guess is a better way to put it. So you're going to learn that in the more advanced classes where there's a lot more philosophy being taught, not just the skills, which is important because once you understand the philosophy and the skills, those two can combine and it will help you become a safer gun carrier, but also a more discerning shot, and you'll be going through all these things to grow and become better.
Yeah, because I think with the first couple classes or whatever, you learn those basics of firearms, but then you start to learn philosophy and gunfighting, and once you kind of get into that realm, then it's a whole different story,
Yeah.
So
looks like we lost Nick.
Yeah, so I guess Nick's computer died, but hey, I'd say that's a pretty comprehensive grasp on what to expect from classes. So
I think we hit everything.
I think so, but if we missed anything, you can let us know. Podcast at iishooting.com, or you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Range Minded Podcast. We always love hearing from listeners, so please let us know.
Awesome. Yeah, make sure you're safe out there and take somebody shooting.
Yes, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.
All right, see you guys.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.